Hey guys, what's going on? This is Awais back with the third part of our Blender series. So in this video, I'll be talking about selecting objects, moving them, rotating objects, scaling objects, and we'll look at pivot points. Before we start our class, I just want to mention if you have any question, you can tweet me at Awais Mirza01 and you can drop a comments below. And if you like this video, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. So let's get started. I'm going to teach you how to select object in Blender. The first thing what you got to do is go to your user preference. I'm going to click on it and then I'm going to go to input tab, and you got to make sure that your preset is set to Blender, because all the selection or mirroring any presets I'm using, it's going to be Blender. If you guys familiar with 3D Studio Max, you guys know that you can select object by clicking left, but in Blender we click right to select an object. So these are the few things different than other software, so you gotta make sure that your preset is Blender so you can follow along with my instructions. Okay, so let's start learning how to select an object. The very simple way to select any object, all you gotta do is just right click on the object and that will select that object. If I select this cube, you can see on outliner here, I've got the name of every object I have in this drawing. So let's say I've got one cube here, I've got one cone. If I click here, it will select that cone. If I click on cylinder, it will select the cylinder, lamp. So you can select objects from here. These are basically some kind of layers. If you guys know any other programs such as Photoshop, we make layers in those programs. So okay, so if you want to select multiple objects, so you hold down your shift key and then right click. Okay, so there's one thing I want to mention here. As you can see, if I zoom in by using my mouse wheel, that the box has an orange outline here and then we have a red outline here. This is just telling us that that was selected last. So here let's explore outliner. Okay, so if I click on any object, it will select them. If I expand this, I've got this camera, I've got the properties for that as well, so these properties will change. I'm gonna just collapse that. If you turn off, so click on this I button, it will disappear. The object is still in our model, but it's just not showing in this perspective view. So I'm gonna turn it back on. If you want to turn off the cube, you can turn it off. You can turn off cylinder, and then there's a camera button here. If I click here, this is basically just going to turn off from the rendering. So if I render this, let's say if I render this image, right, this object, so if I turn this off, it will render all the objects except cube. And the next we got selection, you can't select it anymore, so that's our cube, right? So if I'm trying to right click here, it's not letting me select that. Okay, so now let's have a look at I'm showing you the multiple selection as well. Now we're gonna look at selecting objects from the select menu in 3D view. So the first option we got here is circle. So if I press C, the shortcut key for that is C. So if I click here, now as you can see that I've got a circle here. I can increase or decrease size by scrolling my mouse wheel up and down. If you don't have a 3-button mouse, then you can use plus or minus to increase or decrease sign. Okay, so I'm gonna increase that. So let's say if I click here, what it's gonna do, it's gonna select these 3 objects. So anything comes in that circle will be selected. So this is one way of selecting your objects. To deselect anything from your plan, or you wanna deselect everything, all you gotta do is press A, it will deselect everything. So the A command is basically deselect all, or you can select all. Okay, so if I press A now, it's going to select all the objects available in our plan and deselecting them by pressing A key. Next we got border, right? So if I click on border, the shortcut key for that is B. So I get this window, and hold your button and just draw a window. So anything comes in that window will be selected as well. So that's another way of selection. Press A to deselect, and then let's go have a look at select a pattern. So I'm gonna click on it. It's gonna give me this little dialog box, right? So I know about my scene, right? I'll click on it and then I'm gonna go select that select pattern again. And then here I'm going to type the name of an object such as cube. Okay, so I type cube and then I'll press enter. And as you can see that it will select the cube. Let's go back, click on select pattern. So let's say I've got 1, 2, and 3, 4 objects starting from alphabet C, right? So if I want to select the objects starting from C, so what I can do, click here and then click select pattern, and then you type C and static sign. Alright, and then enter, and now it will select all the objects: cylinder, cube, camera, and then we've got cone as well. So this is how you can select. Now there's another random option. This is just the random stuff that if you are selecting any random objects, I'm going to press A to deselect and then go back to select and then click on random. It will select some random object. Inverse. So inverse, the shortcut key for that is Control I. This is just like press A to deselect, and I want to select this cylinder. And now I want to select all the object except cylinder. So what I can do, Control I, and now what it's doing, it's selecting all the object which were not selected. So except cylinder, everything is selected now. Camera, you can click on select camera. So if any cameras available in your scene, so you can just select them straight away. This is just a basic overview of selections. During the course I will show you some more ways to select an object, but this is just a basic way to select an object. I'm going to clean up a little bit. I'm just gonna select cube, cone, sphere, and I'm going to press delete to get rid of them. And now we have one object, right? So I'm gonna show you how you can translate an object in our 3D space. So first thing what I want to do is click on this tool. So I've got the translate, rotate, scale, mirror commands here, right? So I'm gonna select this cube by right clicking on it, and now on the corner here you can see that it's telling us where are our axes. So x-axis is basically a red arrow, y is green, and then vertical axis, which is z-axis, is a blue axis. So let's say if I click on translate, now it turns to white. So if I move my cursor, as you can see that it's moving around over 3D space. So we're not sure where is it basically. So I'm gonna right click to finish the operation, and I'm going to press G key, which is a shortcut key for translating an object. So I'm gonna click on it and press G key, and now I can move around. Alright, so we're not sure where our object is moving in our 3D space, but you can see down here that our x values, y values, and z values are changing the way while I'm moving the object, and you can see those values in our properties panel here as well. So I'm going to right click to finish that operation. Alright, well, this is not very effective way to move around object in our 3D space, so we can constrain this object. Alright, so I'm going to select this object by pressing right click. I'm just going to orbit that. Alright, so I'm going to click on translate, and now it turns white, right? So if I press X key now, and now if I move my cursor, it's only moving on X axis. If I hit Y key, now it's only moving on Y axis. If I want to move it vertically, I can press Z key, which is over vertical axis, so I can move it on a Z axis. I'm gonna right click to finish an operation. Alright, so if you go to your properties panel and then click on this object cube properties, so here we got location of an object. I can change these values. The first one is X, Y, and Z. So I can change this value to move around Y, and then vertically Z axis values. Alright, and then we can move our object by using this gizmo. So down here we got this gizmo, right? If I turn it off, it will go away. I want to turn it on, and then down here we got three options. That's like a moving option. Next we got rotating, and then we got scaling option. First we're gonna look at moving. So I'm gonna make sure that I select this arrow, and now if I hold my green arrow and then move around, it's gonna move from one place to other place on y-axis. I can move this on x-axis as well, and I can move this on z-axis as well. Okay, so now I'm gonna change the values from here, pressing 1, 1, 1. So make sure that this is properly centered in our 3D space. Alright, so let's say you want to move your object on x-axis. You can do that in a 3D space, but I want to show you how to do that in ortho mode. Alright, so I'm gonna go and press 7 for my top view, and now as you can see on the top, my top view is perspective view right now. I'm gonna hit 5 num key to change that to orthographic view, and now you can't see the vertical axis, which is Z. So all I can do is now I can move it from x-axis and y-axis. So if you click on translate, it's going to turn to white, and then you can move around. I'm going to right click to cancel that. One thing I want to show you that it's good idea to use a shortcut key, which is G. If you click here, and it's gonna start moving from where your cursor is. So I'm gonna make my cursor here, and then I'm gonna press G, and now it's moving along with my cursor. So this is a really good way that if you want to move your object on X and Y axis, you can do that. Let's say if I want to move it on, I'm gonna press escape to finish the operation. I want to change this to front view. All right, this is our front orthographic view. So now we can only move on X and Z axis. So if I press G key, and now as you can see that I'm moving on X axis and Z axis. You can do that by grabbing these arrows as well. All right, so now I'm going to change that to my perspective view by pressing 5 on a numpad, and then I'm going to change that to just gonna orbit that. All right, it's going to change that to user perspective. All right, so this is the way you can move your object. I'm going to show you one more thing. If you click on this plus sign, you can get these properties here. In the properties, you got location, which gives you X, Y, Z values here. So if you can do that, you can move around in several other ways as well. So I'm going to click here and then just drag it back to get rid of that. All right, so now we're going to look at how to rotate an object, which is pretty much same moving object. So how do we do that? I'm going to select this object by right clicking and make sure that I'm just going to expand this as well. So here we got rotate command, right? So I've got rotate command here. I can rotate object by using that gizmo, and I can rotate the object by giving values here. All right, so let's click on this rotate command, and now if I move my cursor around, it's moving wherever my cursor goes. All right, so if I press X key, now it's only rotating on X axis. If I press Y key, I'm only rotating on Y axis. Z key is going to rotate on Z axis, which is very handy. All right, so I'm gonna right click to finish the operation. Now click on G. Let's say if I click G, all right, and I can move around, and I press R. Now the translate basically change to rotation. Press X, Y to rotate on Y axis, and Z. So it's a good idea that select, make your cursor closer to your object, and then press R, and it will change that to rotation. All right, this is the same way you can do that by changing values here. I'm just going to expand that. If I want to rotate this to X axis, I can change the values here. All right, Y values are here as well, and I've got Z values here as well. I'm just going to make them 0, 0, 0. All right, now let's have a look at how can we rotate by using the gizmo. So if you click here, it will go away, and then you got to make sure that it's turned on, and then click on the second option, and now our gizmo basically changed. So we got blue, green, and red lines around. So what I'm going to do, this is my X axis, so I will click here and just hold my button and then just move. Now it is rotating on Y value. If you want to move it on Z, you can grab that blue and then just move it. Red is the X, so you can move that as well. I'm gonna go and finish this operation by pressing A, and I'm gonna deselect that object, and when I select that, I'm gonna make sure that change that to 0 and 0 and 0. Now let's go to our orthographic views. Press 7. Press 7. Oops, press 7 now, and then make that orthographic view. And then if I click X value now and Y value now, so in orthographic view you can only rotate on X and Y. So if you change that to front by pressing 1 num key, now you can change that to Z and X value. Alright, so it's the same way you can move your object by using these two commands. This is pretty much same concept. And now let's have a look at the scale objects. I'm going to go back to my user preference view, and then I'm going to select an object, and now as you can see that it's giving me a rotating gizmo. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to click on S. You can click on scale, or you can just press S. So now you can scale your object. All right, so as you can see that on the right in the properties, our values are changing as well. All right, so if I press X, it's gonna scale that on an x-axis. If I press Y, it's going to scale on y-axis. Z for vertical, you can do that. And I'm gonna right click to finish, and I'm gonna change that to next option. All right, so now you got 3 pivot points. All right, so if I grab this, it's going to scale on x-axis, y, and z-axis. All right, and then I'm gonna go and change these values as well. As you can see that we can change a scaling from here as well. That's too much, so I'm gonna press Ctrl Z to undo. Alright, so these are a few things that you can do. You can go to orthographic view and you can scale it on X and Y value. Now we're gonna look at how can we transform our orientation. Just want to let you guys know that if you have any question, you can tweet me at Awais Mirza01 on Twitter, and I will answer your questions. Alright, so now we're gonna look at some transformation. Let's go and select this chair. I've got 4 objects here: bed, table, this is a small table, and a chair, right? So I want to select this, hold on shift key and select the whole object, right? I'm going to click on a gizmo, and then as you can see that I'm just going to rotate that about, let's say here, and I'm just going to zoom in, pan around. Alright, so now I've got this gizmo here. I can move my chair, and I want to move this here. Alright, and I can just move it up and down. Alright, so now as you can see that I can only move this chair on basically on a global axis. So I'm just gonna take that back. Alright, so now what we can do, basically we can change this. Alright, so if I go select my object, alright, and now X, Y, and Z is on global, so I want to change this to local. So if I change that to local, as you can see that gizmo has been changed according to the alignment of that object. So now if you click here, and then you can just move and you can just drop it under the table, right? So this is the difference between global axis, we got local axis, and we got normal axis, and gimbal, which is used in mesh modeling. We'll talk about it in a later. Alright, so now we're going to look at changing origin of an object. So if I select this bed, my origin is here in the center. So I'm going to go to my quad view, toggle quad view, and I can see that this is center, and this is on center, and this is on centers. Alright, so what if I want to move that origin? So what I can do, I'm going to go and change my cursor about here. I'm going to click here, and then here I can see that I can align that to about corner. So this is exactly there right now. Okay, so I'm going to go back and change to my quad view backward. So my pivot point, a cursor, whatever you call it, it's here on the corner. So I can go to object, transform. So here we got 4 options: geometry to origin, origin to geometry, origin to 3D cursor, and origin to center of the mass. So origin to center of the mass will analyze how big is the object, and that will change the origin and make sure it's in the center. The next we got origin to 3D cursor. What I'm going to do, origin to geometry, that will do the same, that will center the origin, and then geometry to origin. So what it will do is basically it will move that geometry to origin. So this is origin is already there, so it will not move. So I'm gonna go back and change that to origin to 3D cursor. So I'm gonna click here, and now my origin is on this point. Alright, so if I click on the rotate, and now as you can see that I can move my bed from this point. But before, if I wanted to rotate, it will rotate that in a circle. So it's very handy in the animation when you try to animate your tires and stuff like that. So you can change your origin and animate them. So let's go back, and I'm gonna go and change that. Let's say go undo, and then I'm gonna change my origin point to center, geometry to origin. So I click here, it's gonna move that to the origin point. So let's go and undo that, and let's try the next option. So origin to center of the mass. So if I click here, it will change the origin and will make that in the center of the geometry. Okay, so the next we got, I think I've covered everything, origin to 3D cursor. So if I click here, it will change that here. So now if I scale it, it will scale from there. As you can see that point stays here, but it's changing from that point. And if I change there, it will change from that point. Okay guys, so now we're going to look at some pivot points. So down here, you got pivot point option. So let's say I'll select this box, right? And I'm gonna make sure that I'm on a rotation, and then I will grab this blue on a z-axis. I'm trying to rotate that. All right, but what happens if you want to rotate two objects at one time? So let's say if I hold my shift key and select that object as well. So as you can see that the pivot point's gone in the middle now. So I can change that. If I go here and then click on active element, right? So what it does basically, let's say, let me deselect everything. So I'm gonna select this box first and hold down my shift key and then this box. And if I try to rotate that, now it is going to rotate that cube. So what's going on basically, that the last object you select, it will rotate from there. So pivot point will go at the last selection. Alright, so now let's have like another option here. I'm gonna deselect by pressing A, and then let's go and select 1, 2, 3 objects. Alright, so the pivot points went to the last object. So if you go here and then click on midpoint, so the pivot point will analyze the mid area of the object selected, and you can rotate from there. Alright, so I'm going to press escape to finish the operation, and then let's go and select the next one, individual origin. So if I click here, and now it is basically on individual origin. So if I move it, every object will rotate at their own origin. The next option, we got 3D cursor. So wherever your 3D cursor is, they are going to rotate from there. So let's say if I move my cursor here, and they're going to rotate from here. So that's how you can change your pivot points. So I'm going to bring it back here, and then next we got a bounding box. So click here, that's basically, it's gonna center that as well. So it's pretty much the same with active elements. Alright, so this is how you can rotate or scale or move your objects from. That's how you can change your pivot point. So now we're gonna look at the last thing in this video. It's called snapping. So you can snap any object to your grid or any other object as well. So I've selected this cube, right? Let me select this cube here, and then down here I've got this snapping option here. By default it's off, so you gotta make sure that it's turned on. And now once it's on, this next option is called snap element. So you can snap to the increment, which is basically it's gonna snap that to grid. You can snap that to vertex, edge, face, and volume. So the vertex means, let's say if I select that, and now if I move my cursor, and it's gonna try snapping to these vertices. You can see that it's gonna try snapping to this cone. So that's how you can snap as well. So if you want to snap to the grid, let's say if I click here and then change that to increment, it is going to snap to the grid. You can change the grid if you go to your properties, click on this plus sign, and then go down in the display. You've got the grid information. So grid lines, I can increase the grid lines, as you can see that, and I can increase the scaling factor of the grid. So I'm gonna go back to 1, and you got subdivision as well. So if I just gonna orbit now, so you guys can see, if I move my cursor now, it's gonna try snapping to the object. So let me try snapping this to our circle. Alright, so I'm gonna change this to vertices, and I'm going to snap this to that vertex now. Okay, so let me leave that, and then it's gonna snap to that vertex. So you want to look at it better way, so I'm gonna change that to wireframe. And now let's go and try selecting those vertices. You can select the face. Let's say you want to select to the face, you can select that the face, and now it's going to try selecting those faces. So this is how you can snap to other objects and to grid, and this is how you can change your grid size, scale, and subdivisions. So I'm gonna go and change this to, let's say, leave it here. And then we got a few more options here. So if I go to object, and you got your snapping option there. So if I click here, you've got selection to grid. You can make that selection snap to grid. Click here, it's going to snap to the grid. Object, selected, selection to cursor. So if I move my cursor about here, that's our 3D cursor, right? So I'm gonna change this to selection to the cursor. So it's going to take that object to the cursor. So you can change the pivot point as well if you wanna snap to the exact place. So let's go and try another one. So now we got some cursor snapping option as well. These are the selections, these are the objects, and then selection to offset. So you can do that, you can apply the offset as well. So we'll talk about it later, but I just want to give you some information. So object, go here, and then cursor to grid. So our cursor is now snapped to the grid. So let's say I will just go and snap my object to cursor now. Now it's gonna be exactly on the grid. So let's have a look, turn on our toggle quad view. Now as you can see that on the front, right, and we got our cursor in the center. Alright, so I'm gonna go back to my perspective view, and then next option we got here, snapping to center, cursor to grid, and cursor to active. Let's say if I select this, alright, so my cursor is there, right? I'm gonna go and snap my cursor to active. So it's going to take my cursor and just drop it to the active object. That's it for this video. We're gonna start learning mesh modeling in the next video, so stay tuned for that. If you like this video, give this video a thumbs up, and if you have any question, tweet me at Twitter at Awais Mirza 01, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video.